My name is Nora, and I'm 29 years old. For the past 8 years, my life has been measured in 4 a.m. alarms, the weight of flour sacks, in the sweet, warm scent of my grandparents' legacy, the Rose Petal Bakery. To my family, it was a charming but dusty relic. To me, it was everything. So when my older brother, Julian, the family's designated golden boy, announced his grand plan to sell our bakery to a corporate chain, I was devastated but not surprised. He saw a dusty old building on a valuable piece of land. I saw my entire world. They all thought I was just the quiet baker, the dutiful daughter who would eventually fall in line. They had no idea that for the past 2 years, I had been secretly building a new version of the bakery right under their noses, one that would make their plans completely, utterly impossible. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from. Before I tell you about the secret that turned a simple family business into a battleground, hit like and subscribe to hear more true stories about fighting for what you believe in, even against the people you love. My grandparents, Florence and Samuel, opened the Rose Petal Bakery in 1965. It was more than a business. It was the heart of our small town. They knew every customer by name, they slipped extra cookies to children, and their sourdough starter, which they named Sammy Jr., was legendary. After they passed away, the ownership was split between my father, Arthur, and my uncle, who later sold his share to my dad. My parents had no interest in running it, so the responsibility fell to me. I had started working there at 16, and after college, I took over as the full-time manager and head baker. It was my passion. I woke up before the sun, my hands perpetually dusted with flour, and I felt a deep, profound connection to the generations of customers who walked through our door. My older brother, Julian, never shared my sentiment. At 33, he was a venture capitalist. Or at least that's what he called himself. In reality, he jumped from one disruptive startup idea to another, funded by our parents, leaving a trail of failed apps and trendy but unprofitable businesses in his wake. To our parents, Arthur and Beatrice, Julian's failures were just learning experiences on the road to greatness. My steady, profitable, but unglamorous work at the bakery was seen as a nice hobby until Julian found a real career. The favoritism was a constant dull ache in my life. Julian's flashy business trips were celebrated at family dinners. My record-breaking holiday sales at the bakery were met with a polite nod. When he needed $50,000 for a disastrous foray into artisanal water bottles, my parents remortgaged their home. When I needed $5,000 for a new oven that would increase our efficiency by 30%, I had to present a formal business plan and was told to make do for now. My only true ally in the bakery was Mr. Jean, our pastry chef, who had worked there since my grandparents' time. He was a quiet, kind man who saw the passion I poured into the place. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you, Nora," he would say as we shaped loaves in the pre-dawn quiet. "You have her hands and her heart." His words were often the only thing that kept me going when my family's dismissiveness wore me down. I had accepted my role. I was the reliable one, the keeper of the flame, while Julian was the one destined for greatness. I didn't mind truly. I had the bakery, and that was enough. Until the day Julian decided my world was for sale. The announcement came during our monthly family dinner, a tense ritual I usually endured with quiet resignation. Julian arrived late, dressed in the suit that cost more than the bakery's weekly profit, and carrying a glossy binder. "I have some exciting news for everyone," he announced, placing the binder on the table with a theatrical thud. "I've been doing some market analysis, and I've realized we are sitting on an untapped gold mine." My father, Arthur, leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with interest. My mother, Beatrice, looked at her son with pure adoration. "The bakery," Julian continued, flipping open the binder to reveal charts and property value estimates. The building alone is worth 7 figures. The location is prime for redevelopment. I've had a preliminary conversation with a developer, a company called Sterling Group. They're interested in buying the property to build luxury condos. I felt the air leave my lungs. He was talking about demolishing my grandparents' life's work. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm dead serious," Julian said, not even looking at me, directing his entire presentation to our father. They're prepared to make a very generous offer, enough for Mom and Dad to retire comfortably, and enough for me to finally get the seed money I need for my new tech venture. It's a win-win. "What about the bakery?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "What about our customers? What about Mr. Jean?" Julian finally turned to me, his expression a mixture of pity and annoyance, the one he always used when I failed to grasp his brilliant ideas. "Nora, be realistic. It's a small, old-fashioned bakery. It's a hobby, not a scalable business model. Its real value is in the land it's sitting on. We'll give Mr. Jean a nice severance package. He's been wanting to retire anyway." This was a blatant lie. Mr. Jean lived and breathed for his work. My father nodded in agreement, completely mesmerized by the figures in Julian's binder. "Your brother is right, Nora. We have to think about the future, about financial security. This legacy stuff is sentimental, but it doesn't pay the bills." "The bakery pays its own bills," I protested, my voice rising. "We turned a profit every quarter for the last 5 years, a good profit." "A small profit," Julian corrected condescendingly. "Pennies compared to what we can get from the sale. Don't let your little baking project stand in the way of real progress for this family." The rest of the dinner was a blur of them planning their future riches. My mother was already talking about a trip to Europe. My father and Julian were discussing investment strategies. I sat in silence, my food untouched, a stranger at my own family table. They were casually dismantling my life, my passion, my identity, and framing it as a favor to me. The next week was hell. Julian, now officially designated by my father as the project manager for the sale, began his assault. He brought architects and developers to walk through the bakery during business hours, their expensive suits a jarring contrast to our flour-duster aprons. They would stand in the middle of the shop talking loudly about load-bearing walls and maximizing square footage, completely ignoring the customers and the history around them. "They look like vultures," Mr. Jean muttered to me as we watched a surveyor take measurements. "That's because they are," I replied, my heart heavy. I tried to reason with my father again, this time bringing the bakery's financial records. "Look, Dan, sales are up 15% year over year. We have a loyal customer base. We could even expand, open a second location. There's so much potential here." He glanced at the papers dismissively. "Nora, this is admirable, but it's small time. Julian is talking about a multi-million-dollar deal. You can't compete with that. Why don't you take some time off after the sale? Go to culinary school in Paris. We'll pay for it. Think of it as a treat." They didn't get it. They thought they could pay me off, buy my compliance with a trip. They didn't understand that the bakery wasn't a job to me. It was who I was. The fight wasn't just about a building. It was about my very identity, which they had deemed worthless in the face of a big payday. The pressure campaign intensified. My mother started calling me daily, her voice a syrupy blend of guilt and concern. "We're just so worried about you, sweetheart. You're becoming so bitter. This is a wonderful opportunity for the whole family. Why can't you be happy for your brother?" "I'd be happy for him if he built something of his own, instead of selling off something our grandparents built," I said, my patience wearing thin. "Don't be difficult, Nora. she would sigh, her tone shifting to one of disappointment. "You're putting your father under so much stress." Julian, meanwhile, treated the sale as an inevitability. He would email me condescending articles about letting go of sentimental assets and pivoting to more profitable ventures. He even created a shared family spreadsheet where he had already allocated the projected profits from the sale. A new car for our parents, a down payment on a waterfront condo for himself, and a small insulting line item labeled Nora's Fund, which contained just enough to cover a year's rent on my apartment. I felt like I was losing my mind. I wasn't sleeping. I was losing weight. The joy I had always found in baking was being replaced by a gnawing anxiety. Liam, my boyfriend, was my rock. "This is insane," he said one night as I sobbed in his arms. "They're bullying you. You have rights. Your dad is the owner, but you're the one who has kept that place alive. It doesn't matter. To them, I'm just an employee they can fire." "Then we have to find a way to fight back," he said firmly. "There has to be something they're not seeing." And he was right. There was. For the past 2 years, I had been running a secret project. It had started small. Customers were always asking if we shipped our famous sourdough bread or my grandmother's lemon poppy seed muffins. So I built a simple website. I started an Instagram account for the bakery, posting beautiful photos of our creations. The response was slow at first, then it grew. I began offering a small selection of our heartiest goods for online order, using a local delivery service for nearby towns, and experimenting with overnight shipping. I called this online-only brand Florence's Pantry, in honor of my grandmother. I ran it from my apartment, using my own savings as startup capital. I never told my family about it. It was mine, a small corner of the business that they couldn't dismiss or belittle. Over 2 years, Florence's Pantry had become a quiet success. We had a subscription box service with over 500 loyal customers across 3 states. Our Instagram had 20,000 followers. The online business was now generating nearly 40% of the bakery's total revenue, a fact that had kept hidden in the official accounting, booking the income through a separate sole proprietorship. I knew I was playing with fire, but I also knew it was the only way to protect my creation from Julian's greed. This was my ace in the hole. The question was when and how to play it. The final straw came when Julian scheduled a final family meeting at the bakery one evening after we had closed. "The buyers are coming with their final offer," he informed me via text. "We need you there to sign the preliminary agreement. Be ready to be professional and not emotional." The condescension in his words lit a fire in me. I called Mr. Jean. "Can you be at the bakery tonight at 7? I might need a witness." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he replied, his voice grim. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. I gathered all the financial records for Florence's Pantry. I printed out screenshots of our social media engagement. I created a presentation on my tablet just like the ones Julian was so fond of. When my family arrived that evening, I was ready. But I wasn't prepared for the man they brought with them.
Julian swept into the bakery, flanked by our parents. Behind them was a man in a ruthlessly tailored suit, who radiated an aura of cold, corporate power. His name was Victor Blackwood, the CEO of Sterling Group. He surveyed the charming, rustic interior of the bakery not with admiration, but with the detached gaze of a demolition expert assessing a job site. "Nora, this is Mr. Blackwood," my father said, his voice filled with an almost reverential respect. "He's the man who is going to help secure our family's future." "A pleasure," Mr. Blackwood said, shaking my hand with a grip that was brief and firm. "You have a quaint operation here." My brother unrolled a set of blueprints across the main display counter right on top of a tray of cooling croissants. "As you can see, Victor, the structure is solid. We can demolish the interior and have a clean slate for the condo foundation within 6 weeks." They immediately launched into a discussion of zoning permits and demolition timelines, my parents nodding along eagerly.
I was a ghost in my own bakery, my presence completely irrelevant to the transaction. Finally, Julian turned to me, sliding a thick legal document and a pen across the counter. This is the preliminary sales agreement. Dad and I have already signed. We just need your signature as the acting manager to formally begin the process. He said it so casually, as if asking me to sign for a delivery. I looked at the document. It was filled with legal jargon, but the numbers were clear. They were selling everything: the building, the equipment, the name, the Rose Petal Bakery, for a price that made my stomach churn. I looked at my father. You're really going to do this? You're going to erase everything Grandma and Grandpa built? We're not erasing it, we're capitalizing on it, he said, his voice hard. This is a business decision, Nora. It's time you started thinking like an adult. Just then, Mr. Genie emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. Arthur, Beatrice, a word, he said, his voice quiet but firm. My parents looked startled to see him. Jean, we can talk later. We're in the middle of something important, my father said, dismissively. I think what you're doing to this place, to this girl, it's a disgrace to Samuel and Florence's memory, Mr. Genie said, his gaze unwavering. That's enough, my father snapped, his face flushing with anger. You are an employee. This is a private family matter. I am not just an employee, Mr. Genie replied. I was their friend, and I will not stand by and watch you bully their granddaughter. Mr. Blackwood watched this exchange with a flicker of amusement, like a scientist observing specimens in a petri dish. Julian, however, was losing his patience. Just sign the paper, Nora. Stop being so dramatic. I took a deep breath. My fear solidified into a cold, hard resolve. No, I said. The single word hung in the air, a shocking act of defiance. What did you say? Julian asked, his voice laced with disbelief. I said no. I will not sign this. I will not be a party to the destruction of my grandparents' legacy. You don't have a choice, my father thundered. I own this building. Julian and I have made a decision. You own the building, I conceded, my voice surprisingly steady. But you don't own the most valuable part of this business. Julian laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. And what, pray tell, is that? Your sentimental feelings? No, I said, placing my tablet on the counter and turning it face them. The brand. On the screen was the landing page for Florence's Pantry, with its beautiful logo, professional photography, and glowing customer testimonials. I swiped to the next screen, showing the sales figures, a chart with a sharp upward trajectory. I swiped again, showing the social media analytics, the follower counts, the engagement rates. What is this? My mother asked, her voice filled with confusion. This is Florence's Pantry, I explained. It's the online branch of the bakery. It's a registered LLC and a federally trademarked brand. It owns the rights to all of our grandparents' original recipes, the bakery name, and all associated branding. And I am its sole owner. I let that sink in. I watched the dawning horror on Julian's face, the confusion on my parents. Mr. Blackwood, however, leaned forward, his eyes sharp with a new kind of interest. The silence in the bakery was broken only by the hum of the cooling fans. Julian stared at the tablet, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning fury. You went behind our backs? He finally sputtered. You built a separate business using our family's assets? I used my own money and my own time to build a modern extension of our family's legacy, I corrected him calmly. I protected our grandparents' recipes and their name, something you were about to sell for the price of the dirt it's sitting on. My father snatched the tablet, scrolling to the data with a shaking hand. How is this profitable? He demanded. We never saw this income in the bakery's books. Because it's a separate legal entity, I explained. I booked the revenue through my own company. The bakery acted as the supplier and I paid it fair market value for the goods, which is why your profits have been so steady for the last 2 years. This is fraud, Julian shouted, his voice echoing in the small shop. You've been embezzling from the family business. Actually, it's not, a new voice said. Mr. Blackwood spoke for the first time since the revelation, his tone analytical and devoid of emotion. What she has done is create a legally distinct brand identity and intellectual property portfolio. A very smart move. Your family's primary asset, Mr. Adams, is not this building. It's the 80 years of goodwill and brand recognition attached to the name, the Rose Petal Bakery, a name which it appears you no longer own the rights to. He turned his sharp gaze to me. What are your quarterly revenues for the online business? I told him the number. His eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. Impressive. And your gross margin? I told him that as well. He nodded slowly, a small calculating smile playing on his lips. He then turned back to my father and brother. Gentlemen, I'm afraid our original deal is no longer viable. The value of this property plummets without the brand. My company doesn't just buy buildings. We buy successful businesses we can scale. A bakery without its famous name and recipes is just a kitchen. My offer for the property alone would be significantly less. He named a number that was less than a third of their original expectation. My father looked like he was going to be sick. Julian's face was a mottled shade of red and white. All their plans, the condo, the tech venture, the luxurious retirement, were evaporating before their eyes. This is your fault, Julian shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. You've sabotaged everything. I've protected everything, I shot back, my voice ringing with the strength I didn't know I possessed. You are the ones willing to sell our grandparents' memory to the lowest bidder. I just made sure you didn't have anything valuable to sell. My mother, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, her voice a wounded whisper. Nora, how could you be so deceitful? We're your family. When you started bringing developers into my workplace without telling me, you stopped acting like family and started acting like hostile business partners, I replied, my gaze unyielding. I just decided to be the smarter partner. Mr. Blackwood cleared his throat, drawing all attention back to him. Miss Adams, he said, addressing me directly, while my deal with your family is off the table, I find myself intrigued. Your online model is scalable. Your branding is excellent. You've built something with real potential. He pulled a business card from his wallet and slid it across the counter to me. My offer for the building is no longer on the table. However, I would be very interested in discussing an investment partnership with you and your company, Florence's Pantry. We provide the capital for a national expansion. You provide the product and the brand. Think about it. Call me tomorrow. With that, he gave a curt nod to my stunned family and walked out of the bakery, the bell above the door chiming his departure. We were left in the ruins of Julian's grand plan. My father sank onto a stool, burying his face in his hands. My mother began to cry softly. Julian just stood there, speechless, the now worthless sales agreement still clutched in his hand. You heard the man, I said, my voice quiet but firm. The deal is off. I think it's time for you all to go home. I had won. I had saved the bakery. But looking at the shattered faces of my family, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a tragedy. The weeks that followed were a cold war fought in the trenches of stony silence and terse text messages. My parents and Julian retreated, licking their wounds. They refused to speak to me directly, communicating only through clipped formal emails about the disposition of the property. The dream of a multi-million-dollar windfall was dead, and in their eyes, I was the one who had killed it. I, on the other hand, was moving forward. I took Mr. Blackwood's card, and after a week of intense preparation with Liam and a lawyer, I called him. We met in his gleaming downtown office. He was direct, ruthless in his negotiations, but also fair. He saw the value in what I had built, and more importantly, he respected it. We hammered out a partnership agreement. Sterling Group would invest $2 million into Florence's pantry to build a new state-of-the-art commercial kitchen and expand our shipping operations nationwide. I would remain CEO and retain full creative control and majority ownership. The Rose Petal Bakery, the physical shop, would remain as our flagship location and testing ground for new recipes. With the deal signed, I had the capital I needed. I made my family an official, written offer to buy the bakery building from them. I offered the fair market value of the property, the exact number Mr. Blackwood had quoted after withdrawing his initial offer. It was a fair price, but it was a fraction of what they had been expecting. For them, it was a bitter pill to swallow. They had no choice but to accept. The real estate market was cooling, and no other developer was interested in the property without the valuable brand attached. The sale was a cold, transactional affair handled entirely through lawyers. The day the papers were signed, the building that my grandparents had built and that I had saved became officially mine. Life began to change rapidly. We broke ground on the new commercial kitchen. I hired a small team to manage the explosive growth of Florence's pantry. Mr. Jean, delighted by the turn of events, agreed to stay on as my head of recipe development. His creativity was unleashed by the new resources at his disposal. My family, however, was imploding. Without the promise of a big payday, Julian's tech venture collapsed before it even began. Faced with mounting debts from his previous failures, he was forced to do something he hadn't done in over a decade: get a real job. He ended up at an entry-level sales position in a software company, a humbling blow for the man who had seen himself as the next Steve Jobs. My parents were forced to confront the reality of their financial situation. They sold the large suburban house they could no longer afford and moved into a small townhouse. My mother's dreams of European vacations were replaced by the practicalities of a tightened budget. The silence from them was absolute. Until one day, about 3 months after the sale of the building, my mother showed up at the bakery. She looked older, smaller, stripped of her usual confident facade. "I came to apologize," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She wouldn't look at me, focusing instead on a display of blueberry scones. "We were wrong, Nora. We were blinded by the money. I'm so sorry for how we dismissed you, for how we treated this place." "Why are you here now, Mom?" I asked, my voice gentle but firm. "Your father had a health scare, the stress of everything. It made us reevaluate. We lost the house, Julian is struggling, and we lost you. And you were the one who was right all along." I didn't offer easy forgiveness. The wounds were too deep for that. "I appreciate the apology, Mom, but trust needs to be rebuilt, and that takes time." It was a start, a small, fragile beginning. A year later, Florence's Pantry was a nationally recognized brand. Our subscription boxes were featured in food magazines. I was invited to speak at entrepreneurship conferences. The Rose Petal Bakery, my beloved physical shop, was more popular than ever, a pilgrimage site for our online fans. My relationship with my family found a new, cautious equilibrium. My parents and I began having quiet dinners once a month. The conversations were different, tinged with a newfound respect from their side. Julian and I were not friends, but we were civil. He was slowly paying back the money our parents had given him over the years, a process that seemed to be teaching him a long overdue lesson in humility. One evening, my father came by the bakery, just before closing. He walked around, touching the old wooden counters, looking at the black and white photos of my grandparents on the wall. "You saved this place," he said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "No, Dad," I replied, wiping down the marble slab where I'd spent so many happy hours. "It saved me." I had fought for my grandparents' legacy, for my own passion, and in doing so, I had found my own voice and my own power. The bakery was never just about flour and sugar. It was about heritage, about love, and about the quiet strength of a woman who refused to be undervalued. Have you ever had to fight for something your family considered worthless? What gives an idea or a place its true value? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more stories of personal and professional triumph. And remember, the work you love has a value that can't always be measured in dollars and cents. Thank you for listening.